What's up, everybody? Welcome to Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm your host, Katie Mox. It's time for division previews. And first up, it's the NFC East. And what better way to kick things off than welcoming my friends from the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, Ryan Real Money Kramer and Sean Stacking the Money Green. Fellas, thank you so much for coming on. There was no one that I wanted to talk NFC East with except for you two. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us on. Of course, Eagles, NFC champs, NFC East champs. So again, great podcast to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, apologies to any Cowboys fans out there.
Not going to be kind to the Cowboys.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Katie.
No, and yes, well, I'm so happy to be here. But there's some bad news, Kramer, that's circulating around here. For Giants fans, thoughts and prayers with all of you because the Giants couldn't reach a deal with Saquon Barkley ahead of Monday's deadline. Is he gonna play this season? Are you worried? How you feeling?
What a troll job by you, having this episode scheduled perfectly after the franchise tag deadline. Look, this is it's classic contract negotiations. Every young person listening should know you have leverage, use your leverage. The team has leverage right now. Unfortunately for Saquon, that means we have the drama dance, which means we're going to have no training camp practices. Not a big deal, right? Yeah. Running backs are replaceable. It's just good to see the Giants are being run by a smart man. And I think they'll get through this. I think John Mara and ownership will find a way to give him some funds on the side and take care of him. So all this gets smoothed over. But yeah, I think he's back for practice regular season week 1.
Ryan also not wearing any Giants gear in solidarity with his boy Saquon, because Ryan also holding out as a fan till the Saquon deal gets done.
Only one franchise paying me.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that running backs are replaceable. I was reading an article today that, a bunch of running backs sounded off, of course, after this deal. A couple of ones that I found the most interesting. Austin Eckler, he said, well, there was someone that said draft a running back, play the running draft. If he's good, franchise tag him, and then just do it again. And this is what all of the running backs have been responding to. Austin Eckler, this is the kind of trash that artificially devalues one of the most important positions in the game. Everyone knows it's tough to win without a top running back, and yet they act like we are discardable widgets. I support any running back doing whatever it takes to get his bag. And there's one more. Jonathan Taylor said, 1, if you're good enough, they'll find you. 2, if you work hard enough, you'll succeed. And if you succeed, 3, you boost the organization. And then doesn't matter, you're a running back. Sean, what do you think of this? I feel like running backs are getting disrespected.
Yeah, they are. They certainly are getting disrespected. A little like Crimea River when they say we're criminally underrated. Yeah, you're still making 10.1 million on the franchise tag. I get it's gone down. I get, I agree with Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler should get paid more than a third receiver, but I kind of identify more with management here when it comes to them being discardable widgets, because you look at like the Super Bowl champs, the Chiefs, the Rams, the Bucks, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Eagles in 2017, the Patriots again, the Broncos. Like, you name their running backs. Like the running backs did not carry the team. The quarterbacks who are the ones that get paid. And then from there, I think if anyone is underrated in the NFL, it's offensive linemen, because they're the ones that protect the quarterback. They're the ones that, protect your quarterback and don't force you to play a 4-string quarterback in a championship game. What I'm saying is, I think if anyone's underpaid, it's offensive linemen. They should be the ones griping more. Like interior alignment. Where's the guard love? Where's the center love? You could make a case that a great center is worth more than a great running back. So I feel for them a little bit, but they're still doing all right.
I will make that case actually as a 49ers fan that has a ton of running backs. And, the offensive line outside, of course, of Trent Williams has always been a bit of a problem on that right side. The NFC Championship game might have been a little different if we had more respect for the offensive line.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger complaint comes from a guy like Tony Pollard, who has not made that much money on his rookie deal.
Yeah.
I think for Saquon is currently the 3rd highest paid running back active, like career earnings. And so I think it is hard to cry a guy like that a river. Obviously, he was a high pick and people aren't doing that anymore. That being said, this is market economics, right? The reason, I saw some folks come out in defense of the center like Sean over here, where if you look at average annual value and all that nonsense, yeah, some positions are devalued because either they're a onesie position or there's a flock of young running backs coming into the league every year who can carry the ball. I mean, part of the reason the running back position may be important, but it's super easy to play. And these guys tend to not need as much of the practice time. They plug right in and they get to business. And I think that's all we're seeing here. The fix has to come at the bargaining, like the collective bargaining level. And it won't for a while. So I guess we'll just have to have a telethon or something to raise money for the running backs.
For the running backs. I would tune, as you know, forget who's the guy that Jerry something that does the one for muscular dystrophy every year.
Yes.
Okay, nothing against muscular dystrophy, but I would tune in to the running backs.
Jerry
Please
Lewis
help us pay
doing the
Jerry Lewis.
Well, yeah, we got to get them all singing one song, like "We Are the World." All the running backs,
old running backs,
holding hands. We are the world.
Barry Sanders.
What about the future? And people, they make it such a big deal. They're like, what about our children? What about the kids growing up today that won't be running backs? Who cares? Tell them to play receiver. I mean, it's insane. Like,
Le'Veon Bell came out publicly and said it's a sad day that he's now convincing young people to play different positions, which I wonder the forum that Le'Veon Bell is speaking to young people, maybe at the boxing gym where he's training for his next fight.
Well, Le'Veon Bell also tweeted out, "Why am I trending?" And then he must have looked into, oh wait, everyone's pointing out what an idiot I was and to Kramer's point, as much as I love these shade being tossed in the Giants organization, the toxicity it's creating, I do think Saquon Barkley is going to play because what are you going to not? You're going to give back millions of dollars.
Well, that's the closing point.
So
no one has ever sat out significant time on the franchise tag. And the people that counterpoint with Le'Veon Bell, they forget that Le'Veon Bell ran for over 1,900 yards or total yards on the franchise tag before then holding out when he was franchised the second time by the Steelers. So yeah, they don't miss games. So big drama for the offseason.
Big drama for the offseason. We got to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are talking NFC East division totals, games, you name it. You're watching Moxie Bets. We'll be right back. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, welcome back to Moxie Bets. Here talking NFC East with the guys from Sports Gambling Podcast Network, Ryan Kramer and Sean Green. Let's keep things going with the Giants here, Kramer. Now that the Saquon question is out there in the open, how are you feeling about the Giants this year with their win total 7.5?
Yeah, you got to get in front of it, right? It opened at 8.5. All the smart people in the universe have bet it down because what do we know? Regression. People love regressions. Smart people everywhere talking about regression. They went 8-4-1 in those close games, 1-score games. We tend to see that regress, but they were not as unlucky as everyone is touting. They were 8.3 expected wins. They ended up with 9. Okay, they got a little lucky and made the playoffs. You can explain that with great coaching. You can explain that with maximizing your talent, which they had none of last year. So obviously I'm on the over. They upgraded all over the place. Not only did they upgrade that center position that Sean was touting with John Michael Smith, they brought in a true alpha #1 receiver in Darren Waller, and they upgraded with speed all over the place. Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt to go with Darius Slayton, and Oregon State proud Isaiah Hodgins, who showed up and made a big impact right away. So yeah, I'm obviously high on the Giants. I think the coaching staff has shown continuity, keeping the coordinators, the coach together for another year. We could see a massive step a la Josh Allen in year 2 for Dan Jones. Someone a lot of people are throwing shade at. And oh, by the way, Wink got a true shutdown corner in Deonte Banks. We all saw the viral video with him shirtless or sleeveless, giving that big bear hug to Joe Shane. And oh, by the way, they quietly brought in some run support with Ashawn Robinson and Rakeem, awesome name by the way, Rakeem Nacho Nunez Roches. So I think they improve on both sides of the ball. I think it doesn't. I'll say it. I don't think it really matters if Saquon comes back.
Wow.
Ooh.
I think some of their best games. I think some of their worst games were games where he was touching the ball 30, 35 times. And I think they drafted a guy in the 5th round by the name of Eric Gray, who has great quads out of Oklahoma. And at the end of the day, this is going to
Great
become a
quads.
passing team. And I'll say this: X factor for this Giants team, if they go under, it's because Evan Neal sucks. Evan Neal takes a big step forward. Giants obviously go over the total.
All right, you agree, Sean?
Oh, I couldn't disagree more, Katie. I mean, Ryan threw it in there at the end. One, they're going to become a passing team. Why would you want to become more of a passing team with Daniel Jones, a guy who led the league in throwing short of the sticks last year, 2.8 yards short of the first down 6. They also dead last in the league in passing plays over 20 yards. We know who Daniel Jones is. You talk about Josh Allen making that jump. He was younger. Daniel Jones is going into year 15. We know who Daniel Jones, or not year 15. Daniel Jones is going into year 5. It feels like year 15 because we've seen the same thing over and over from Daniel Jones. Yes, in a dink and dunk offense, they can eke out, 9 wins, whatever. But I think Daboll is a little high on himself. He did win Coach of the Year. They must have overlooked his 1-5-1 record in the division. But I think it's going to be much tougher for the Giants. They have a much tougher schedule. They still have issues at tackle, as Ryan pointed out, with Evan Neal. Like, if you're going to become more of a passing team, you need to give Daniel Jones time, and I don't think they're going to be able to give him that time. I think the Daniel Jones turnovers are going to come back when he's forced to play more aggressive and throw the ball down the field. So I think the Giants are in for a bit of a wake-up call. Give me the under on the New York Football Giants.
Shocker that Sean is a little bit of a hater here on the Giants. I'm going to agree with Kramer. I'm kind of high on the Giants this year. Danny Dimes made massive strides with Brian Daboll after he took over as head coach, as you said, Kramer, a la Josh Allen. And guess what? Josh Allen started throwing interceptions as soon as Daboll left. So I really do think that was a big part of how successful Josh Allen has been. And he did this last year without any real receivers. Like you said, Kramer, added Darren Waller. What a stud that guy is. Paris Campbell, Jamison Crowder, ended 9-7 regular season last year, advanced to the playoffs despite a projected win total of just 6.5. So the fact that this was 8.5, went down to 7.5, I too think that the Giants can get 8 wins. All right. Now we got to talk Eagles, Sean. Now we got to talk Eagles. All right. Obviously, they are the favorites to win the division over at Caesar Sportsbook. They're also the favorites to win the conference at plus 320. Can they get to the big game again? And their win total is the highest, tied with the Chiefs, 11.5. The Niners used to be up there, but then they got bet down to 10.5. This is high, Sean. I mean, even as an Eagles fan, this is high.
Yes, it's high, but it's high for good reason. You have Jalen Hurts, who's proven himself to play at an MVP level. I mean, he was 15-2 as a starter last year. I think things you could be concerned about. They did lose both of their coordinators. Jonathan Gannon might be addition by subtraction. That dude sucked. Shane Steichen, I thought was a really good play caller. So I think that is a concern. They were fortunate, maybe injury wise. So obviously that could be tough. They did lose Javon Hargrave to the trader he signed with the 49ers, but they also had a really good draft, bringing in 2 stud D linemen in the first round. So I think they're going to be able to replace his production there. Maybe slight concerns at the interior linebacker, but at the end of the day, like Jalen Hurts, if there's anyone that can take losing the Super Bowl and coming back with a ton of resilience, a ton of focus, a ton of determination, I think it is Jalen Hurts. They still have Nick Sirianni, who I think is one of the top coaches in the league. They still have a very, very good offensive line. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I mean, AJ Brown, I think, is set to have another really good year. They didn't lose any of their starting cornerbacks. That was kind of a concern going into the offseason. So yeah, I think their schedule is slightly tougher, but still they play the 49ers and the Giants
significantly tougher this year.
They play the 49ers and Giants 3 times. So that's three guaranteed wins right there. That's a good start. No, they got the Bills and the Chiefs in the regular season. So that's a little bit of a change, but again, they won by a big margin last year. Like they led the league in having 10-point or more leads. So it's not like they were just eking out wins or you saw like a team like the Vikings, they were a bit of paper tigers. The Eagles were a very good dominant team. They lost a close Super Bowl, which was heartbreaking, and I'm still really annoyed. But I think they're primed for a good season. I like the over, but honestly, if I had to choose between the over 11.5 and the win the division, I would actually go win the division.
Yeah. All right, that makes sense. I'm a hater, as we know, right? I mean, there's no
It's a real rivalry
fake
now.
in this one. I swallowed a bitter pill last year after the NFC Championship game, and dealing with your lovely, respectable fans. But I will say the Eagles are a great team. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to argue anything about Jalen Hurts, because I actually agree with you. If there is a quarterback that can come back and do this, I do believe it is Jalen Hurts. I mean, the kid is an absolute stud. Just the amount of running touchdowns he had in the Super Bowl was unbelievable. But like you said, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Steichen, obviously a much bigger loss than Gannon is. RIP to the Cardinals season this year. But you do have to expect some regression from a 13-win season. That's just a lot of wins. And last year's schedule significantly, you said a little bit, it was significantly easier than it is this year. And the Super Bowl hangover for the losing team is a real thing. Only 3 teams in NFL history have come back after a loss and actually made it back to the Super Bowl. As a 49ers fan, look, we were going to come back on a revenge tour, and I hope to God what happened to us does not happen to you guys, because that was the worst thing ever. But, you did have a lot of losses on defense and free agency. And I do feel like this, I'm not worried about your ability to move the ball. I'm a little bit worried on defense, because that was such a huge part of the team last year. 70 sacks in the regular season. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. So I do think they're going to be a great team, but I will take this under 11.5.
Hopefully you put that in a blender so Sean could drink it through a straw. He just had to take all of that. I think the argument is like this roster is really good. The offensive and defensive line should be really good. Great. I think you are I'm glad Katie stood up and pointed out the schedule went from, it's still a medium difficulty schedule, but it was if you look insanely easy last year. And I think your point to them not having to play in a lot of contested games could be an argument against them. Like, what will they be like if they are in some of these games where they have to play from behind a little bit? And you're also brushing under the rug the fact that this is the first team since '94 for a team that made the Super Bowl to lose all their coordinators. And that was Katie's San Francisco 49ers under George Seifert, who, by the way, lost Mike Shanahan to the Denver Broncos and Ray Rhodes to your Philadelphia Eagles. That team happened to take a 2-game step back, going under a theoretical win total of 11.5. So I think you have, even if Gannon is this, like, I get it. He does in video form look a little bit like a guy who maybe isn't going to be a great head coach, but he obviously had something dialed in as the coordinator. And I think Nick Sirianni, like all of the tweets I have bookmarked of him being incredibly arrogant on the sideline. I wonder if that's going to play the same way when he doesn't have these coordinators. And the last thing I'll say is I do think Shane Steichen probably had some special sauce that was working for Jalen Hurts. Now, that being said, Jalen Hurts, he has a long career of adjusting to new coordinators. So there is that. That being said, I'm with Sean. If you are bullish on the Eagles, which I'm definitely taking the under on this win total, I would take the division play as well. It's a similar play, and you have a little bit less risk, especially at this time in the offseason. I mean, who knows? We could still find out that Jalen Hurts. I mean, we haven't seen him throw yet this offseason. We don't know if the improvements are coming.
You guys are crazy.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with Sean that, I like them to take the division. I know we're going to get into that a little bit later, but I also kind of like a little bit of a long shot in there. Now looking at the Cowboys, everybody's favorite team to trash. Kramer, 9.5 wins with the over juiced to -170. What are you taking?
Cowboys fans love them some Cowboys. Got some inside Iggy, do some spots with a show out in Dallas. And they were up in the practice facility, which we've been to for the Dallas Cowboys. And Zeke has been completely replaced by Tony Pollard on all the massive murals. So Zeke will not be coming back. And I think that's the big storyline here. You fire Kellen Moore because you want to get more run happy. Kellen Moore, over 2 seasons, you guys led the league in points. What were you thinking? And so now you bring in Brian Schottenheimer, a guy who conservative would be a compliment. I think he's ultra conservative, going to be running the ball a ton. And then you look at the running back room. Ronald Jones has 2 seasons in his career where he has over 105 carries. Malik Davis had a total of 284 carries in college, and Deuce Vaughn could be the bell cow. Actually carried the load at Kansas State, but he's 5'6" and his dad works for the team. So I don't know how much time he might actually get. Then you get to Tony Pollard coming off a serious injury, franchise tag, obviously playing for his money, but quote, Tony obviously is a very talented runner, good all around back, and can play every down. Running back coach Pete said, it's this is a quote from 2022, by the way. It's just like some guys are race cars. Some guys are high quality, high expensive sedans. A sedan can go forever and a long distance at a very higher rate. Again, his language is hilarious. Where race cars can go very high and quick and only for a short period before they run out of gas. He was alluding to the fact that he didn't think Tony Pollard could be a bell cow back. And so I don't know what their strategy is this year. I would love to fade the Cowboys in any way possible. I think it's crazy people are finding their way to talk themselves into this being a division winning team. I think it's crazy to talk yourself into Dak and this passing offense being an attractive fantasy football offense. And I'm out on all phases. Give me the under.
Yeah, I mean, rare thing Kramer and I agree on is hating on the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, so the issue with the Cowboys is they've had trouble advancing in the playoffs. When in the history of the NFL has bringing in a Schottenheimer helped you advance in the playoffs? Like, what are we talking about? And the one strength of the Cowboys historically, or at least in this, last kind of decade here, has been their offensive line. And I don't think their offensive line is the same. The offensive line keeps getting older. They really haven't found good pieces to replace them. They've had some issues on the defensive side. And I don't think you're going to lean into the running game, but it makes no sense because Ryan's point, like, who is the bell cow guy? Like, it made sense relying on the running game when you had Zeke in his prime, but I just don't think you have that. And I don't think Dakota Rain Prescott there is a guy that can survive unless you have a really strong running game, unless you give him some easy throws off of play action. He led the league in interceptions last year, not even playing a full season. So I think taking Kellen Moore out of the equation is going to hurt the Dallas Cowboys. And God bless Caesars. They're giving us plus 145 on the under. I'm going to take that all day. Thank you, Caesars.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Caesar. I mean, it's just hilarious to me that this over is juiced to minus 170. And I was looking at some of the splits and I laughed because 96% of bets and 99% of the money is on this over 9.5 for the Cowboys. And that just shows you, one, that it is America's team, because clearly there's a lot of these delusional people that are pouring this much money into a Cowboys franchise that really has struggled in the postseason for years and years and years. They did go 8-4 in the regular season last year with Dak Prescott under the center, 12-5 total. They did add Brandon Cooks, Stephon Gilmore in free agency. And, you got Tony Pollard, who I do think is a good back, but he's also someone that, hasn't signed his franchise tag quite yet, or maybe he did sign it, but there's some kind of question marks there. You got Micah Parsons, who's a beast. I believe he's the favorite right now for Defensive Player of the Year, but they scapegoated the out of Kellen Moore last year, and can you even really trust Mike McCarthy to call plays? What is this Texas Coast offense that they keep talking about? I'm not buying it. Bottom line, Dallas has not been able to sustain any kind of consistent success as a franchise. The last time they reached the playoffs for 3 straight seasons was in 94 through 96. They've got a difficult schedule. The division is stacked. This number is too high. Give me the under. Yeah, at the plus 145. Shout out to Caesar Sportsbook for that. So we're all in agreement on the Cowboys, which is kind of nice. A little kumbaya moment for us.
Let's go.
Moving on to the Commanders. The highlight of their season last year was ending the Eagles' undefeated streak. That was probably the only good thing that they did. Ended up 8-1, win total 6.5, the under juiced to minus 120. I got to be honest, I have no idea what to do with the Commanders. I'm probably just going to lay off this, but I'm curious what y'all think. Sean, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Ron Rivera, I think, is the new Jeff Fisher. If you remember, Jeff Fisher was always the guy we would make fun of. 7-9, 8-8. Like Ron Rivera, 12 years as a head coach. He's only had 3 seasons with a winning record. He won the division in 2020 at 7-9. This team is just, this clearly feels like a transition year for the Commander football, Redskins, Red Wolves organization, whatever they want to go by. because it doesn't seem like anything is permanent. Like Ron Rivera, I mean, they brought in Eric Bieniemy. Why did they bring in Eric Bieniemy? Someone must have had a conversation going, listen, we're not really that into Ron Rivera. You're going to get the head coach job pretty quick. So it feels like they're almost setting up to tank. And if there was a team that would secretly go, hey, we've only won 3 games here. The first, we're like 3-5. Hey, let's get rid of Ron Rivera. Let Eric Bieniemy take a shot. I mean, the new ownership, I'm sure, is just like chomping at the bit at the idea of like Eric Bieniemy, our head coach, Caleb Williams, or some other quarterback high in the draft. I don't think they're completely sold on Sam Howell, at least at the organizational level. Dan Snyder still has like a ton of bad baggage kicking around that Commander organization. Like the guys get injured all the time. Chase Young, who was supposed to be this franchise changing player for them, I don't know if he's a bust. I don't know what his deal is. They might trade him. It's just tough to get excited. I mean, Jahan Dotson is fun for fantasy, and I do think they're like their roster, offensive line, bunch of questions there. The defensive line I think is solid, but on the back end, a lot of questions. So I'm going to go under here. But I would definitely look at, you could like, if you're looking to lay a bunch of juice, I just don't see how they get in the playoffs at all. So fade of me for the Commanders.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is, again, you can say a lot of what you said with new ownership, which by the way, the deal is not done yet. Dan Snyder still the owner.
Still has a chance he could mess this up.
So, but that being said, I mean, they went 8-1 last year with offensive coordinator Scott Turner and Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz. If you let that settle into your brain a little bit and you look at the win total at 6.5, and now it's Sam Howell and the insurance policy is Jacoby Brissett, who looked pretty good last year as a Brown. I don't mind it. I don't mind the weapons around. Brian Robinson not coming off a leg shooting this offseason. Gibson is still there. They plan on using him in the passing game. You're hearing the Logan Thomas might be Kelsey 2.0. I'm not buying it, but they're saying it. And then you look at the wide receivers. They might have the best wide receiving core in the NFC outside of the Eagles. And so I think things can positive
in all of the NFC or just the NFC East, because I'm sorry, let's look at the 49ers receiving.
I'll take Terry McLaurin, Jahad Dotson and Curtis Samuel over whatever the 49ers have.
Ooh.
Deebo Samuel's a running back playing wide receiver. No offense, Katie, but
okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. But I think Washington's receiving core is good enough to get the job done. And I think they have the dogs to run the ball a little bit. And like you said, it's hard to see this team being truly bad unless they just full on tank intentionally because they want Caleb Williams. So I think the advice for me would be take the alt. If you think they're bad, go alt under, move it a couple games and get that plus 300. If you like them, I absolutely think they're live to make the playoffs or long, this is the NFC East. A team hasn't repeated in a long time. It was the Eagles back in 03-04, I believe. And while it looks like it could be the Eagles to bookend that 20-year drought, I don't think it's so crazy to say that this team could come out with something to prove with Eric Bieniemy, a guy who has been disrespected, and Sam Howell, a guy that the franchise is saying they love. Everyone in the building says they love him. So I would take a long shot on maybe them to win the division, them to win the playoffs. But at 6.5, the win total has to be over.
I think it is real quick. I do think it is one of the tougher ones to take here as far as the win total, because to Kramer's point, like they can still be a bad team and end up getting 7 or 10.
Were they good last year? Because they won 8 games.
No, I mean, again, they were 8-1. I think actually Heineke has a little bit more dog in him than Sam Howell. Again, that's yet to be determined. What's leaning me, I was kind of on the fence. What pushed me to the under is just bringing in Bieniemy. It feels like the lame duck status of Ron Rivera and kind of this transition year that they've labeled from organization on down is what had me pushing under. But I'm with Kramer. Like I think the fun way to play them is some of these alt unders, or to Kramer's point, like 6.5 is low if you look at just like the talent they have on the roster. But I'm still on the under.
And last thing I'll say, to a man, every player speaks highly of Rivera. Yeah, and that has to.
He seems like
something.
A great character guy, but just not a guy who's going to win you a bunch of games.
Riverboat Ron, have you real quick? Have you guys watched the quarterback show on Netflix that is produced by our friends here at Omaha Productions? Have y'all had a chance to watch?
Not yet, but I can't wait.
It's in my queue. And
Okay, you absolutely
just so
have
I
to
can.
watch it. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just so I can quote Kirk Cousins. You like that? You like that? Walking
Well,
around, but
first of all,
I heard it's awesome.
it's amazing. You have to. I mean, it's really interesting for multiple reasons. One, to see Patrick Mahomes in the year that he wins a Super Bowl, the Super Bowl MVP, and the MVP. I mean, when do you get that kind of an inside track into that happening? So that's really interesting, and what makes him so great. The Kirk Cousins stuff is interesting to me too because he's so likable. I mean, the guy is just a nice family guy. And I started walking back in my head all the terrible things that I have said about him. So I'll be curious to see what you guys think of Kirk Cousins when that goes on. I had a comparison that I was going to give you, but I'll wait until you actually watch it, about guys that are nice that just can't get you past the finish line, like a Riverboat Ron here. It's almost like you got to have that little psychopath in you. You got to have that Bill Belichick in
Little
order for
dog.
you to get past the finish line. So I'm not sure that Riverboat Ron has that. All right, let's talk now some player props. And Sean, this is where I will give the Eagles some love on this show. I love Hassan Reddick to record the most regular season sacks. You can find this on some books at plus 1,800. And if you're going to take that, maybe take him as well for defensive player of the year at plus 2,500. He set an Eagles record last year with 11 sacks in the season. He had 3.5 sacks, I believe, in just 2 playoff games. And if y'all remember, when I came on your show before the Super Bowl, Hassan Reddick to get over 1 sack, I think it was like 1.5 sacks, was at like plus 450. And I was like, hammer this all day long. He's going to do it. There was that one game in 2020 when he was a Cardinal, when he had 5 sacks in one game. 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. Now, I know that I'm sure this is a tough thing for you to talk about, Sean, because the flooring was clearly something was wrong there, but a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, not getting any sacks in the Super Bowl. I love him at plus 1,800 here. And then if you're going to do that, if he's going to have the most sacks, you might as well sprinkle a little bit on defensive player of the year.
Well, Katie, again, very sharp handicap there. And there is always a lot of correlation between getting the most sacks and getting defensive player of the year, because it ends up being a counting stat award a lot of the time. So I'm with you. I love Hassan Reddick. I think, having Jalen Carter on the interior there will help free things up for him. Fletcher Cox not having to, play all 3 snaps. I think it's going to create more opportunities for Hassan Reddick. So love that. As far as me, for I got 2 here. One is just I got to throw some shade at Darren Waller. Kramer and I have a bet going of who will have more fantasy points, either Darren Waller or Dallas Goedert. The loser has to shave their beard and get down to a mustache and wear the mustache one day for every fantasy point they lost. So there's a lot on the line. So may as well just load up here on Darren Waller under 700.5 receiving yards. I mean, the Giants their leading receiver Slayton barely got over 700 receiving yards. Bellinger was in the mid 200s. I think this is asking a lot out of Darren Waller. This is projecting Darren Waller playing 17 games, him being productive in all those games. I do think injuries are a big reason of why the Raiders moved on from him. So I think this is just like perfect scenario. Everything goes right. And in general, just take the under on these player props. I mean, open up your Caesars app and just fire on every season long under, because eventually one of these guys are going to get hurt. They're going to get banged up. They're going to lose their starting job to Daniel Bellinger. There's so many ways it can go wrong. So give me the under on Waller and long shot, because we do see offensive player of the year oftentimes go to a non-quarterback. So I think AJ Brown is going to continue his success. It's a fun long shot here at 50-1 offensive player of the year. Again, they do have a tougher schedule. They could be involved in more shootouts. I think the Eagles, to be successful this season, they're going to need their passing game to carry them a little bit more than it did last year. And I think that's where AJ Brown could have some more receiving touchdowns, yards, some of those counting stats to get him offensive player of the year. 50-1, fun long shot. Go Birds.
I love it. Kramer, what are you thinking?
Very predictable. I'll say I'll say a nice thing first. I do think if you're gonna fade Waller, the way to do it is in the yardage market. That being said, good luck. Look, I'm obviously going to come on here and tout Dan Jones, aka Vanilla Vic, aka Danny Dimes. His passing, I didn't want to come in here with the rushing touchdowns, although I do like him to have the most rushing touchdowns of the quarterbacks, which you can find out there in the wild. And I considered throwing shade at Dak to lead the league in interceptions again, but Schottenheimer might prevent him from doing that. He is 10-1 out there. That being said, Dan Jones' passing touchdown prop is at 16.5.
That's so low.
It's so low. I told you the offense is going to shift around. There are more red zone weapons when it comes to receiving. And when you look at last year, like Andy Dalton went over this total last year.
Well, Ryan, to be fair, they are finally adjusting it. But Daniel Jones has only gone over this once in his rookie
year when the offense was more about passing the ball down the field, more explosive plays. So adding Darren Waller, adding Paris Campbell, some speed, and maybe not having Saquon Barkley, or at least an offense that looks a little different, is going to drive this over. And obviously, I'm going to come in here with a long shot. I thought about getting cute, but why get cute when you can put Dan Jones out there at a 75-1 MVP? Just lock it up. At the end of the day, if the ceiling case comes in, he's going to be in the market for this. He's not going to be anywhere near 75-1. He's a quarterback that can both throw and use his legs. 24 passing touchdowns, 12 on the ground. I don't know if that's enough to get him the MVP. Depends on what's happened around him. But if he outplays Jalen Hurts this year, if they win the division, why play a 6-1 when I can play a 75-1 and have some fun along the way?
Gamble responsibly, people.
Brian Dable's the difference. Brian Dable's an MVP maker. And I love that Katie, aka mainstream media, is adopting my Brian Dable was the crutch that allowed Josh Allen to walk.
Yes.
So give me Dan Jones as an MVP candidate.
I have to say, I was on a podcast earlier today with Will Brinson, and he gave out a Matt Stafford to win MVP 50-1. And I was like, get off this program. Like, how dare you? So I do like the Daniel Jones 75-1 from a value perspective, from a vibe perspective, and just from a Moxie perspective, much more than a Matthew Stafford for a long shot.
Jordan Love is also 50-1, which is crazy. Like, like where are these prices coming from?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and also, there was a time, at least what Brinson was saying, that you could get these quarterbacks at 75 or something to 1, but the books got burned by them so much that you kind of don't see these big numbers as much. That's why he was saying to take Matt Stafford. And yes, if you have Matt Stafford and Jordan Love on the same level, clearly Matt Stafford is going to be above there. But I just couldn't put my money on it if my life absolutely depended on it. All right, if we look at the division winners, it seems like we're all in agreement here on the Eagles -105. Pretty good value for them to go back to back. Cowboys +165, Giants +700, and the Commanders at +1300. Any other bets here or anything else you guys want to say, or are we just kind of all leaning Eagles?
I think the relative value objectively is probably on the Eagles, but when you have two teams in the division at 7-1 and 13-1, that again, we've seen the NFC East. We understand how football works. It's July 18th. I would absolutely play the Giants. I would actually not play. I'll give me the two teams at the bottom. I feel like I do this every year in the division. Giants have been in the bottom a while, but I'm taking the two teams at the bottom. We're going to keep the trend going. No team repeats in the NFC East.
Except the Eagles. Give me the Eagles -105 for the division. I do like that better because I do think there is a world where they win the division at 11-6, or even a tiebreaker scenario at 10-7. The win total is high. I mean, I just to that point, like if they do go 12-5, I don't see how they also win the division, right? So to me, the value is on them at the division at -105.
I agree with this, but when I was looking at it, I was kind of thinking, all right, what about the Giants kind of sneakily to win the conference, the NFC? All right, long shot, obviously, right? Eagles, I think, are going to win the division. All right. I think that's going to happen. But I also said that they are headed for some regression. We don't know how big that regression is going to be. The Niners, of course, are stacked, but the quarterback situation makes it hard to bet futures on them right now until, of course, they announce that Brock Purdy is the week 1 starter. And then we're all excited and we're winning everything that there is to win. The Cowboys fall apart in the playoffs. You can't trust them. Saints, Vikings, Lions, too many question marks there. So who does that leave? Leaves the Giants.
I think to your point.
16-1.
I think to your point, Katie, because the NFC is so wide open, because the 49ers are hesitant to start Trey Lance, even though he's the best quarterback of all time, according to my Twitter feed. I think there is, obviously the Eagles are the favorites for a reason, but next to that, like, I think the NFC is kind of wide open. So if you're making a case for the Giants or Commanders as long shot for the division, why not roll it into some conference stuff as well, or even like to have the number one seed or something like that? Because I do think those are correlated, and I do think the NFC is pretty wide open and kind of a soft conference. At least if you look at like Jalen Hurts, all right, number one quarterback in the conference. Who's the number two quarterback in the conference? Is it Kirk Cousins? Is it Brock Purdy if he's healthy? Like, it's pretty. Is it
Sam
Matt?
Darnold?
Literally, it's Jalen Hurts and then everybody else. Yeah, okay, Jalen, Dak.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not as high on Dak as some people, but like the number two quarterback in the NFC is a massive question.
Derek Carr, baby.
I think it creates some value for the long shot conference stuff, even though, as we know, Eagles are going to dominate, win everything. So
can't lose.
Go Birds.
Yeah, can't lose. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can catch the guys on their daily NFL podcast, the Sports Gambling Podcast, on SGPN's YouTube channel, and also wherever you get your podcast for the audio-only version. Make sure that you follow at Kramer Centric and at Sean T. Green on Twitter. Keep up to date with them on everything. And while you're at it, head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com for all of your sports betting needs. Fellas, thank you so much. It's always such a treat to have you both. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. And don't forget to follow us on social as well at Moxie Bets.